I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 116. If you don't already know, I'm Kev Chardello, coming to you on Tuesday, August 8th, and the Bobcats have more commits. Stop me if you've heard that before. This 2024 class is rolling. We've got, I think, 3 more commits to talk about. They're up to 8 now for the class of 2024. 6 last week puts them at 8. So we've talked about a good chunk of them. We'll talk about the other 3. Big one on Saturday night with Jordan Martin. We'll get to all of that. We'll get to some good fall camp notes. Got to go out there on Saturday, talk to GJ Kinney, talk to Lindsey Scott. Some of you saw those interviews on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/winnnoworgetbent. Go find that YouTube channel and go check out some of those interviews. Before we get to this episode, though, we are sponsored by the Galindo Collective, TGC LLC. TheGalindoCollective.com. That's GALINDO Collective.com. A team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people, planning, and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. They offer full-service solutions on general business evaluations, but specialize in residential and rental properties, commercial operations, and construction. If you own property and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter at TGCLLC, Instagram, and Facebook. They are the Galindo Collective on those. My guy over there, Rick Galindo, a true Texas State sicko, a Texas State grad himself. I just had lunch with him not too long ago, talk a little season strategy for what we want to do, and he's very pleased with him sponsoring this pod and the response he's gotten. So thank you all for reaching out to him, and thank you to Rick Galindo for sponsoring us all through the season. I can't wait to continue to promote this business. It's a great business that they really help out people. So shout out to Rick Galindo at thegalindocollective.com. That's GALINDO, GalindoCollective.com. All right, let's get to these Bobcats. Let's start with fall camp, because I know that's what's on the front of all of your minds right now. It's what's on my mind, of course, as well. What's happening with fall camp? What's going on? Like I said, we have 2 interviews up from this weekend, from Saturday. We spoke to GJ Kinney, a new offensive assistant, Lindsey Scott Jr. If you remember, he was GJ Kinney's quarterback last season at Incarnate Word, Walter Payton Award winner, threw a bunch of touchdowns, ran for a bunch more touchdowns, just a terrific player. Really cool that he's on this staff. He even says in that interview that he still plans to go to the XFL. He was picked up by the Roughnecks, the Houston Roughnecks. So January 5th, he's still going to report there. But this season, he's on the Bobcat staff, and he gets to look at all these players, specifically the quarterbacks. And he talks a little bit about those quarterbacks in that interview. But speaking on quarterbacks, Saturday was the first day I got to get a real good look at these guys, where I saw more passing drills, I should say, by them. Whenever it gets into 11-on-11 team drills, they put us in detention or timeout over in the team room. We got to wait in there where we can't see anything. You know, maybe I saw a few things at the very beginning as they were shepherding us away into the back room. But during those passing drills, I got to see a lot. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Malik Hornsby does have a really good arm, especially in these passing drills, when it's not okay, process the defense and make this pre-snap read and stuff like that. He's got a heck of an arm. I mean, we talked about it after the first day of camp, where there was that one highlight that was put on some of the local news where he connects with Drew Donnelly for a real deep pass. He did it again. It seems like those two are working on some symbiosis out there, getting some chemistry down, because they did it again right in front of me. I was like, wow, there he goes, displaying the arm strength again. And when you go back to GJ Kinney's remarks after that first practice, talking about how there's still some of these mental mistakes that he should be able to overcome since he's been here since the spring, You look at that and initial thoughts is, oh, that's a negative. Maybe he's getting down on Malik Hornsby a little bit. But I've actually, and there's a lot of fall camp speculation. Of course, I've been speculating TJ Finley. I'm still leaning TJ Finley. And I was very confident about it last week, but from what I'm hearing this week, it's still very much a competition, and that Malik Hornsby could very well be in the lead. Now, again, I've talked a lot about TJ Finley, and so this is kind of new news for me this morning, and it isn't what I would call a high-end source giving this to me, so it's very far from confirmed. But I will say it's interesting to hear it from this particular person. And what I think is when I look at that is when I think back on those comments from GJ Kinney, is that the way he phrased it as well, that he shouldn't be making these mistakes for somebody who's been here since the spring. And then when talking about TJ Finley, he's did really good for his first day. And he didn't really go into, he made mistakes that you shouldn't. But I guess there is a bit of more of a frame of reference in this offense for Malik Hornsby, having been here in the spring. So I guess the standard was higher on that day one. And then when we talked to GJ Kinney on Saturday, it doesn't go into details about the quarterbacks and how they played as much as he did that last Wednesday. He says there's starting to be some separation, which tells me that he's starting to find his starter. At the time on Saturday when I heard that, I'm like, okay, that must be TJ Finley. That's who he's talking about. It's everything I'm hearing. And then I hear that this morning that it could be Malik Hornsby in the lead. Now, and here is my cynical thought. I don't want to say cynical, but my thought on that is like, this could be an attempt at misdirection. I've been talking about TJ Finley a lot. This could be an attempt to like, hey, let's change up the narrative. Let's make it still seem like it's something that it isn't. Because that happens. That does happen sometimes. I don't think that was my initial thought. I don't think that is the case, though. I think this is some genuine information that I'm getting. But that kind of thing does happen, so that could very well be the case. Everything I see at practice, when I see them throw, I talked earlier, Malik Hornsby, he's got a really good arm. TJ Finley has a better arm. At least from the little bit that I've seen, that's how I feel. I feel that TJ Finley, both have really good arms. And I think Malik is a better thrower than gets made out to be. He is very much a dual threat. He is a speedster for sure. And if he does end up being the starter, I think that signals that they're going to be running a lot, and they want that dual threat in their quarterback. Because TJ Finley, he can be elusive, he can be quick. He's definitely not a dual threat. But that arm of his, I was very impressed with how much zip he has on the ball with very little momentum from his body. He can just kind of stand there and almost whip it and not even have to move his feet, and it gets there really fast and really accurate. I found that to be really impressive. I think he needs a little more touch on his deep ball. Sometimes he overthrows some guys, or it's a little inaccurate out of bounds. And maybe that's something, working on timing with these receivers, that could come with timing some as well. He is brand new on the scene, fourth practice. So, but I appreciated the zip he displayed on the ball there in practice. Definitely don't see him as a dual threat, especially seeing him live and in person, kind of for the first time. I saw him in glimpses on Wednesday, the first day of practice. Saturday is when I really saw him out there and everything, and he's definitely not a dual threat, but he's got a heck of an arm, got a really strong arm. It's interesting. I've said it before, and I confirm it when I see it on Saturday, how different these two quarterbacks are. They brought in two completely different guys. Then you add C.J. Rogers to the mix, and we've heard Kenny say before that he really grasped what this offense is about mentally. It's just some of the throws aren't there, and seeing him throw compared to these other two guys, I get where that's coming from. C.J. Rogers is still a competent player himself, but I get when you're looking at these two guys who are coming in from SEC programs that, and I mean, T.J. Finley himself won starting jobs at these programs, and you can you can see why he would say that about Rodgers, where because Rodgers is a pretty accurate thrower, but it's just the ball doesn't move as fast. Sometimes it comes up short on some of these deeper ones. It's just the throws just aren't there. You know, that's kind of what GJ was getting to. But yeah, so I'll say this: I was a lot more confident last week with my TJ Finley prediction. I'm still leaning that way. I'm still going to say it that way. But you know, it's interesting, the information that comes up and reveals itself with quarterbacks, the starting quarterback. It's nice to see that it's a true competition as well. I hope that's the case. You know, I mean, after last year, I know a lot of you out there are suffering from a little bit of PTSD from last season. Only one quarterback under center the whole time. Lane Hatcher, starter at Ball State, by the way. Don't know if I've mentioned that before. We only saw one quarterback the whole season, every snap, even in blowouts. You know, it was the same thing at every single game. And so, I mean, I'll even say this: if they are leaning Malik Hornsby, that, like I said earlier, that signals to me that they're going to be running a lot with the quarterback, with other people, that it may be higher than 50-50 when they say they want to be run pass. It may be higher than that, leaning towards the run. That would be an interesting look, an interesting wrinkle into this offense that passed a whole lot last year, but given their personnel, maybe that's what they're thinking. But if TJ Finley gets it, then I think that there needs to be a package for Malik somehow, somewhere. I mean, the guy is talented. He's an athlete. I think that this is a different style of offense where the decisions have to be made quick, rapid fire. And that may take some adjusting to it. Maybe that leads back to what Kenny was saying about him on Wednesday, where that was the area he was deficient in. I mean, even in the same breath, when he's talking about how he's deficient in this side of it, he is more than sufficient in when he tucks the ball and decides to run. Make something happen. If the play starts to crumble around him, somebody misses a block or what have you, they're guarding up the receiver, or covering the receivers downfield, he can still make something happen. And it is dangerous to the defense. That's how he likes to describe it, dangerous. And that's more of an exciting adjective than we've heard him use when describing TJ Finley. You know, to call him a dangerous athlete is you know, that's a heck of a compliment. So I know he's still in high esteem with them, no matter how they're leaning. But it does feel like a real competition, and it does feel like whoever starts against Baylor is probably going to be feeling some breath on the back of their neck. That they're going to be ready to play somebody else. Now, that being said, it is concerning if like TJ Finley is a grad transfer. What if he's so disgruntled he decides to bail somewhere else real quick? I don't know. I think that's a possibility. I remember there were rumors about him going to Southeastern Louisiana. Those are the two schools were a backup at Ohio State or a starter at Southeastern Louisiana or Texas State, and he decided to go with Texas State. Does that happen, or does he stick around and maybe wait for his chance and try and break through the starting lineup? I don't know. This is an interesting fall camp. It's hard to get past talking about the quarterback position, even though there's so many other things to talk about. The offensive line, what are they going to do there, specifically at center? There's been some terrific play from some of these new guys. I wrote about it on Patreon, patreon.com/winnoworgetbent. I put out an article Monday morning, giving my full in-depth thoughts on practice from Saturday and some of the stuff I saw. And I think I just highlighted one specific player besides talking about quarterbacks. That's Caleb Ford Dement. He led the warm-ups. He was there in front of them, getting everybody juiced up and excited. And guys really respond to him, and you can tell they really appreciate him as a leader. The little bit of 11-on-11 I got to see, he got an interception on Malik Hornsby. It was a deep pass to the end zone. And I will say, right before I mentioned the Drew Donnelly pass, Hornsby had a pass where he connected in stride with Donnelly. and it looked great. It looked terrific. So I could see why he's still very much in the mix. But he did have that interception. And even if you hear that interview on the YouTube channel where with GJ Kinney, where he talks about it's that time of the year in fall camp, last day of the first week, where things are just inconsistent. Some plays are good, some plays are bad, and that's just how it is at this point in fall camp. And he was specifically talking about quarterbacks, and I hear that, and I feel like he's talking about Malik from the plays that I saw out there. But there I go again, reverting back to the quarterbacks when I'm over here trying to talk about Caleb Ford Dement, KFD out there, looking great, wearing number 2. Then you have Josh Eaton on the other side wearing number 1. I really love those two corners. That's going to be a lot of fun. I like the way Sam Latham looks out there. Big guy. If you remember him, he's the Incarnate Word transfer, defensive end, number 9 on the defense. He's got the long hair coming out the back of his helmet. I promise I'm not biased because of that. He does. He looks good out there. When you talk to coaches, you talk to anybody about him, he's also been one of the early leaders just from familiarity in this scheme and this 4-2-5 defense that Jonathan Patke has. He's really been able to help bring guys along. I didn't get to see any Bo Corrales. I don't know why. I may have just missed him. I know he's wearing number 3. I saw him the first day. I didn't see him on Saturday. Who knows? The guys have things going on, so might be that type of situation. I don't think it's like an injury. They had some guys working out in the injury area. And it was. I should have looked closer. Maybe he was over there, just not in pads, not wearing that number 3. But yeah, I was. That's somebody I was definitely looking for out there. Brian Holloway's wearing number 0. If you remember, he's a linebacker, SMU transfer. He was here last year. Started to really come along towards the end of the year. Him and Sione Tupou on the inside last season were really strong with that in that front 7 that had so much success last year. I say success. It's hard to say that when they have a 4-win team, but that was a really good front 7. It was the best one they'd had since 2014. And Brian Holloway was in the rotation, was in the mix there, and I know they really liked him in the spring. We're talking a lot about Brian Holloway. He's one of the few guys who's returning that got commended. There's Ashton Hawkins and Jordan Revels and Calvin Hill, but Brian Holloway was one you didn't hear a whole lot about, and then he was getting a lot of praise. And that seems pretty set. Those 2 inside linebackers with Dan Foster Jr., transfer from Marshall, and then Brian Holloway right there. I think it's going to be on the defensive line. I think that's going to be a really big rotation. I don't know exactly who's going to be the starter. I mean, because as much as you want to say Jordan Revels and Ben Bell at defensive end, I just mentioned Sam Latham, and they've brought in a lot of guys, and now there's 2 spots on the interior line as well, going from 3 down linemen to 4 down linemen. There's just it's a different dynamic there, and I think both lines, both the offensive line and the defensive line, are in heavy rotation. In different types of rotation. What looks to be like the first unit will then come out again, and it's half first unit, half second unit, and then maybe some third unit guys peppered in on the next set. And so it's different every time I see it out there. So I couldn't tell you who the starters are. I could guess just based on Nash Jones, probably the left tackle there. Imagine Caleb Johnson's going to be a starter at guard. It's going, there's, like Ben Bell and Jordan Revels are going to start on that D line, but they're moving a lot of guys around. I mean, I mentioned on the last pod that Nash Jones was working a little bit at center, and so was Caleb Johnson. So, who knows what's going to go on there. So that's what I'm going to focus on this week, fall camp, when I get out there. That's what I really want to look at. You're listening to this on Tuesday. I'm at practice right now on Tuesday. That's one of the days I get to go out there. And I'm checking it out. I'm going to be focusing on this line. I've focused a lot on quarterbacks, and at this point, they're just going to have to name a guy, and then we'll talk about something a lot different. Otherwise, it's a whole lot of speculation. But I want to get to know both of these lines with so many different players on both sides of it. Defense, there's some returners, starting returners. On the offensive line, there's really not. It's a whole lot of new guys. what's crazy is I was talking to Chris Coots, the media relations director at Texas State, and I think I believe it was 10 players from that played last year on Texas State were signed out of high school. I know 3 of them were special teamers like Seamus O'Kelly. It's guys. It's Calvin Hill. There's just not very many of these guys that they signed in high school that are still around. So pretty interesting deal. When he told me that, I was like, wow, man, it's really this transfer portal era. It's a different deal. But speaking of new guys and signing guys out of high school, the Bobcats have 8 commitments now for the 2024 class. I mentioned that at the top of the show. They got 6 last week. We made a whole lot about the whole horses and Ferraris party they had at Bobcat Stadium, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. 17 visitors. They were able to get another one of those visitors to commit on Friday with Priest Ash, Crowley defensive end. Terrific player himself. But the other 2 commitments this week weren't visitors from that recruiting trip from 2 weekends ago. The first one is Westbury corner Chris Jones. He's actually a receiver at Westbury, but he will play corner at Texas State. And then Saturday night was a big one with Kimball receiver Jordan Martin. Jordan Martin himself has 19 offers, which was a lot. When I was typing it up, when I was tweeting it out, it's taken me a while to type up all his offers. I even missed some. I had to do a second tweet just to put some on there. But I won't read off all 19, but he does have Ole Miss, Boston College, Arizona State, UNT, Arkansas State, ULM, Incarnate Word, Sam Houston State, Tulsa, Toledo. There's some other really good schools in there, but I just kind of ended it there with those ones, mainly starting with the P5s. You hear that's always great, or P4s, or what are we calling them now? How have I not addressed alignment at all on this? It hasn't trickled to the Bobcats yet in the Sun Belt, but it will. It always does. It starts in the P5s and it ripples and it moves across the landscape and eventually hits the G5s with an earthquake. So that's coming. Hopefully nothing too bad. I will say, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'm very happy with the Bobcats in the Sun Belt. I think they hopped in a great conference 10 years ago. I saw somebody commending Larry Tice for that, and hey, it's hard for me to do that, but I'll acknowledge it. That was a good move. They did the WAC the first year. They switched it up to the Sun Belt. So, but anyways, I digress. Yeah, so the Power Fives for Jordan Martin, you like to see that. You like to see Ole Miss, Boston College, Arizona State. You like to see him beat out UNT, Texas State. Especially with Morris. There's a lot of correlation between GJ Kinney and Morris up there at UNT. Both were up for this job at Texas State. Both are former Incarnate Word head coaches, one year after the other. It's interesting. The dynamic there. And I feel in getting this player kind of in, not necessarily in their backyard, but in their vicinity, I'd say, with Dallas, that's not too shabby to go up there in North Texas and go get that. I even saw Mike O'Gunn, defensive line coach for the Bobcats. I've talked to him in passing. He seems like an exciting guy. That's somebody you're going to start hearing from some of these other coaches, like Lindsey Scott. We heard from this weekend. We're going to start peppering in more of those. But yeah, he's tweeting out that we're real comfortable in Dallas, putting that out there. And I know they're saying it without saying it. Subtweets, if you will, some subtext there. They're trying to make their mark in the Texas recruiting landscape, and they're doing it so far. I mentioned the other 2 guys that they got. Actually, let me talk a little bit more about Jordan Martin, because I want to talk about his huddle. Really enjoyed his huddle video. I love watching these highlights. One of my favorite things about recruiting. I love covering recruiting in general. I love watching highlight tapes and giving my amateur scout notes, if you will, because it's definitely amateurish. But I like to look at these guys and think about how I see them fitting into this Texas State scheme. And of course, my favorite thing I love, not my favorite, but a big thing that I love when I turn on a huddle tape, I want to see special teams highlights. even when they're the stud in high school that doesn't have to play special teams because they're so good, I want to still see them playing special teams and caring enough about it that they not only put it in their highlight tape, but it belongs in their highlight tape because they're giving excellent effort on special teams. I think that's very indicative of just the type of athlete that they are. And our guy Jordan Martin here, he starts his huddle video out with a punt return touchdown. He's got a couple of those. So I appreciated that. I appreciated his speed. He's listed at 6 foot, but I can tell he's a little bit taller than that, which goes to it's a lot of these recruits, these 2024 guys specifically, tall, rangy athletes at any area on the field. You know, receiver, defensive back, on the defensive line, they are tall and rangy. That's something that they definitely have on top of their menu for these guys. I liked the speed and height, of course. I liked how he could hit him on any level. He could hit him in a bubble screen. He could hit him deep. He can hit him on a 10-yard in. He has every route. A nice possession receiver, if you will. I don't even want to call him a possession receiver because he can still take the top off as well. I think when I talk about how much I like Joey Hobart, I've mentioned him a lot. He's kind of the same way, where it's just any level, any route he can put out there and produce results. I think especially when you look at the 19 offers, you look at his tape, this is a guy that they're going to have to fight for. And he's right there in UNT's backyard, and they've already got an offer to him. No doubt they're going to be circling back around and saying, hey, you sure about Texas State? You sure? Because we talked about the 17 guys who visited Texas State. 3 of them were already committed. I've tweeted about them. I guess I haven't talked about them on the pod because I was trying to get y'all to go to the Patreon, patreon.com/WinNowOrGetBent. Lots of good articles on there. I've been hitting it daily. I hit 9 articles last week, so go check that out. But in part of that writing was talking about some of these players that were committed to other schools but still visiting Texas State. Jashawn Johnson was one that I'll highlight specifically because he's a Texas or UTSA commit that visited Texas State. Went out and tweeted some pictures of him with the horses and Ferraris at Bobcat Stadium. Zach Smith, an SMU linebacker, he also tweeted it but then deleted it. But he put it out there. We saw it. He was on that visit as well. He's an SMU commit. And then who's the third one? Tice Williams, Boise State commit. He's another guy who put that out there. That one, it'll be hard to take these guys away from these Texas schools, but I think that even these coaches showing these other schools like, hey, your guys aren't safe just because they're committed, I think that's enough to a shot across the bow of some of these other coaches and their recruiting staffs. It's good, let your presence be known. But that being said, Tice Williams at Boise State, hey, I bet you could convince him to stay home because all these are Texas guys. I should mention that as well. Are they? Let me check the all 8. I'm looking at this list right here. Shout out 247. They have all 8 listed under commits. Yeah, they're all Texas. So yeah, the 8 commits are Texas. I say the UTSA commit, Jay Sean, he's from Louisiana. So he was one of the 2 of the 17 that visited that weekend that were from Louisiana, not Texas. So 15 of those 17 were from the state of Texas. But one of the Louisiana guys is the UTSA commit. So yeah, they're trying to take back Texas. I feel like it'd be a little easier to convince someone to not necessarily take you back, but just stay here. Stay in Texas, Tice Williams. He's a real good safety himself. But let's look at this whole class. It's only one has a star rating on 247 Sports, and that's Brad Jackson, the first commit. They gave him a 3-star rating, 84 overall. Reagan High School, quarterback Brad Jackson. He's been doing a lot of quote tweeting of these guys, and he even tweeted some pictures that he was at Horses and Ferraris. So he's showing up and just establishing himself as a leader of this recruiting class. If that's a thing, it seems like it is a thing, and it could be a very important thing if there is kind of the guy who, what does he do? I don't know, starts the group chat with everybody once they commit, or I'm not sure what that all entails for Brad Jackson, but I appreciate it. Keep being that leader. Right after him, we have Junior Thornton from La Vega. We talked about him on the last pod just a little bit. Let's click on him. Let's take a look at some of his offers here. He has Abilene Christian, Georgia Southern, North Texas, Sam Houston State. The rest are loading. And UTSA. Okay, I thought he had a UTSA offer. That's why I wanted to click on it. I just couldn't remember if it was him or not. It is Junior Thornton. His name is Junior on 247. His real name is Jublani. He goes by Junior, though. So Junior Thornton, that's the proper thing to call him. Just in case if you see that name out there and you're confused, it is the same player. But yeah, another guy, North Texas offer, another UTSA offer, Sam Houston State, Georgia Southern, keeping him out of the Sun Belt. That was the same thing with Jordan Martin, those Sun Belt offers from Arkansas State and ULM. It's nice to beat out some of your peers, especially in conference peers like that, in-state peers, in-conference peers. Just tells them that you're coming. Of course, Kylan Evans is the third receiver, along with Martin, with Thornton, and Kylan Evans. Kylan Evans was the second commitment out of Frisco Emerson. Clicking on his name here, just looking at the offer list on 247. Sometimes, those aren't always up to date, as you know, 247. That's pretty hard to keep up with this national recruiting database and have everything up to date all the time. So a lot of times their offer list is lacking. But it takes some time. We scroll their Twitter and you can go through and find them. That's usually what I do. But on the 247 page, which will have an accurate list of teams that have offered him, but there's just usually more. But there's a lot for Kylan Evans. So we have Air Force, Liberty, Memphis, Missouri, Saginaw Valley State, Texas Tech, Toledo, and Tulsa. So that's a lot for Kylan Evans. It's, again, a guy turning down a couple P5s, turning down some in-state peers to pick the Bobcats. I'm impressed with this 8-man class. I'm impressed. It's been a while since we've seen double digits before fall camp. And I put this in the Patreon post that it is interesting to think back on Jake Spavital's comments about how he couldn't recruit certain caliber of athletes to Texas State that he can at Cal. And to see what G.J. Kinney is, he's just kind of flipping that theory on its head. Raylan Adams, of course, Newton DB. He's another guy who turned down UTSA. He's an athlete at Newton, but he will be a DB at Texas State. He turned down Sam Houston State, Utah State, and UTSA. I know for a fact Raylan has more than what I just read right there, but that's just what's listed on 247 Sports. The big one is UTSA. That's kind of the common theme that I'm wanting you to hear and realize what I'm talking about here. I mentioned Christopher Jones as well, Westbury corner, plays receiver at Westbury. So when you watch his highlights, it's hard to really gauge what's he going to look like as a corner. But you can see the speed and you can see the length. But he's another guy who's turning down North Texas, Grambling State, and Prairie View A&M. I mean, it's just there's a lot of UNT and UTSA offers. I'm not saying there's a rivalry, but it feels like there is one, at least between the coaching staffs. We got Michael Savali up next that I'm looking at right here from Clear Springs High School in League City, Texas. He turned down offers from Arkansas State, Houston Christian, Memphis, Missouri, Texas Southern. The rest of the list is loading. There it is, Montana State. I waited all that for Montana State. Arkansas State is the lone Sun Belt one. But again, it's nice to take a guy away from in-conference foes, as I was saying earlier. And Priest-Ash, I feel like I talked enough about Priest-Ash, but we'll do it again. Arkansas State, Montana State, Stephen F. Austin, UNLV, and Weber State for Priest-Ash for him. 6'3", 250. You watch his highlights, and he looks like that prototypical defensive end. His highlights are actually really fun because he's a big guy, like I just said. And it's pretty funny when you watch these guys who are just so much bigger than their competition. They're just dominating even when their technique isn't sound, because he doesn't quite get low enough. He doesn't really punch with his hands very well. It's stuff that can be taught. It's young guy stuff, but he's just so much bigger than everybody else. He's just a bully out there, just throwing around left tackles and and other guys. There's one where he tackled a guy without leaving his feet. And I was like, he just kind of ragdolled him on the ground. And I was like, oh yeah, there's something you can do with that for sure. You just gotta bring him in and tune him up a little bit, get some of that technique down. But yeah, I like this class a lot so far. You got to hang on to these guys. That's the big thing, is getting 8 commits this early. It's a long season. They could go out and have a terrific season, and all of a sudden, way more P5s or P4s. Or I was tweeting with somebody who was saying A4, the autonomous 5. That seems a little salty and petty, but P5. It's in the lexicon, so I'm going to go with that. We'll see what that turns into, a P4 or whatever, but. They need to hold on to a lot of these offers, and the number one offer that I look at that they really need to hold on to is Jordan Martin. That's a terrific player. 3 receivers, though, it's a signal to me that that's very much a position in need. It's one that they are very focused on, is going out and getting some of these receivers, DB as well. That's the next highest volume position that they're going after. I would love to see them get some linemen. They did get a defensive lineman with Priest Dash, but he's a defensive end. I want to see some big bodies, some big bodies. I know that there is it Tyler Norris? He tweeted about a top 5. Sorry, I'm going to pull it up on my phone because I know I was just looking at it. He tweeted about it's his top 6. I'm sorry, top 6. He has Texas State, Louisiana Tech, Incarnate Word, New Mexico State, and Memphis. Now, and Sam Houston. Oh, okay. So he has an orange background because the school he goes to, W.T. White High School, they have orange colors. So it's an orange background on the graphic. It says Sam Houston State was a little camouflaged in there. But Texas State in his top 6. And I look at that top 6, and you might look at Memphis and think, man, it's a little bit of a bigger program. But otherwise, New Mexico State, Louisiana Tech, Incarnate Word, Sam Houston, I think Texas State should have an advantage. We should be able to beat those schools in recruiting and be able to bring this guy into the mix. He's somebody I've even talked to. He was another one of those 17 visitors from not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And I spoke to him a little bit. How you feeling about Texas State? And he wants to wait a little while before he commits. But Texas State is on the top of his list. Near the top of his list, I should say. He didn't say number 1 or anything. Obviously, he puts out a top 6. So I like to think on the top of his list, and he has a top 6, top 2, top 3 in that area. Some working somewhere around there. But that's someone to keep an eye on. I think it's always good to get linemen shored up. You want as many as you can get. Big guys come at a premium. Go get them when you can. But all right, that'll do it for this episode. There's no interviews or anything on this one. Like I said on the last episode, we may be changing up the format a little bit. We will put out interviews separate than the pod. I did hear feedback from y'all specifically about the press conferences, how you do want something with the press conference. This is where you come to listen to it, even though there's other ways to listen to it. A lot of you listen to it here, and I appreciate that, and you've been doing that for years, so we'll keep that going. Whether that, in what form that looks like, will be determined soon. But we will still get you that good stuff. Get those good press conferences. That's some true sicko work right there. If you're wanting those press conferences, gotta give it to me. I want to listen to that press conference on my way to work. I get it, man. I'm right there with you. That's how I operate as well. But we will get those press conferences to you. We might still spread out the interviews where it'll be separate on YouTube and a separate audio file as well. But we're gonna gauge it. If y'all don't like it, we'll change it back. So let yourself be heard. If you don't like it, if you do like it, whatever your feelings are, thoughts or feelings, please let us know, because we want this to be a podcast that's very consumable to y'all and how you want to consume it. Some people say the pod is too long when it's like an hour long and they're driving somewhere. Other people have really long commutes and like it to be that long. So I want to hear from you about how to what you think about the formatting of this pod. I mentioned it earlier, patreon.com/winnowergetbent. I have been writing a lot on there. I've been using it as my blog. It's $5 a month to get on there, but it is not a donation. I am working tirelessly getting that that sweet content out there. I posted yesterday about Jordan Martin. I posted today. Oh, I'm reading this on Monday. Sorry. I posted on Sunday about Jordan Martin. I posted on Monday about fall camp, the first week of it and what it meant. I'm going to keep it going. There was times last week where I had multiple posts in a day. So it's going. It's nice because it feels like I'm in where I used to be, where man, something happens and I have the opportunity to stop and write about it and put content out there. I don't have a word count on my article. I can hyperlink things as much as I want, whether it redirects you to another article I've written or it redirects you to like the 247 page or a specific athlete's huddle page. It's nice. And I'm still figuring out everything I can do with it. I want to make it look nicer. Right now, it's very basic right now. That's just the setup once you start. But I look at some other people and some of their Patreons, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. And I think I can even eventually tie it to WNOGB.com, which is our merch site. Go check that out. Check out some nice shirts. If you're on the YouTube channel, you can see me showing off that Mad Cat right there on my shirt. We're going to have, I teased it a little bit on the last episode, we're going to have some hats. Get ready for those hats. They're going to be here in time for you to order and have them during the season. So prepare yourselves, put money away in an escrow just for hats. It won't be that. It's not like the cost of a house. Just put like $30 away. And we'll get you a sweet hat. We'll have that coming for you. But besides those, the free sites are always available. Don't worry. You don't have to be on Patreon to hear this pod. Obviously, as you know right now, you can always subscribe to this pod, and that helps support us. If you want that free version, you're like, man, I really love this pod, but I still want to feel like I support. Subscribing, commenting, retweeting, all that stuff is supporting. That still helps us do crazy stuff like make accounts for extended family members and just start running some of our episodes on a loop on the YouTube channel. All that stuff helps. The biggest thing that helps is subscribing on the YouTube channel. Once we get to 500 subscribers, we can start monetizing that, which is very nice. That helps us grow as well. Of course, make sure you're subscribed on Apple and Spotify, all that good stuff. Thank you again to TGC, the Galindo Collective, thegalindocollective.com, Galindo collective.com, sponsoring us all through the season. Thank you to Zachary Webb, working tirelessly, getting us all that awesome stuff out there on the YouTube channel. He's a big reason I want you to subscribe to that YouTube channel because my guy has been working hard at it. He has told me it's his baby, the YouTube channel. So, hey, let's help his baby grow, huh? Let's get that baby some formula by mashing that subscribe button. But no, seriously though, thanks to Zach Webb, the wizard over there. And hey, if you want to be one of our sponsors like TGC, hit us up. WNOGBKEF@gmail.com. That's WNOGBKEFF@gmail.com. I've got discounts for sickos, so hit me up on there. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I hope I don't say this too much, but it's nothing without y'all. I would be talking to myself in a room. It's kind of what this is. And, I send it to Zach and he gives it to you. But right now, I'm by myself in this room, just talking to myself. Totally sane. Nothing wrong with that. All righty, sickos. Win now or get bent.